All right. So the Tao Te Ching. This is my introduction to it for what this series is going to be. But am I qualified? Well versed in? Do I know all the great wisdom or whatever? No, I'm not some spiritual teacher. I'm just some person who has read this a couple times over now, and I recommend that you do the same and you continue to read it probably for the rest of your life. Um, uh, it is also known as the Way, or like the Book of the Way, and I think that it is something that has been beneficial in my life, and I recommend you reading it because I think it'll be beneficial in yours. However, I know that most people, they don't want to read. And two, getting into this and understanding what the book is not necessarily easily understandable, digestible, and accessible. And so, um, for me, this is the kind of book that how I like to read it is I will read one section a day. It's broken up into like 81 different parts. There's like 81 different, I would call them almost like little lessons, little things. They're typically like a page or like 2 pages or so long. They're all very brief things. You can read it in 5 minutes, not even. But it's not about reading it that's really important. It's about thinking about what it is that it's saying and what it's reading and putting it into your own words and your own understanding and relating it to your life and your experiences. And that's where the true understanding and change happens, at least in my experience. So, my first exposure was through, it's like a podcast on Spotify. It's like the Tao Te Ching for Everyday Living. I listened to that. I thought that was very good and a good way to get myself, to introduce myself to it because I didn't have to read it. I didn't need to necessarily think for myself because in those, like, he reads through each section in like each one, and then he breaks it down and gives you, kind of makes it a little bit easier to understand what is being said there, right? And so I think it's helpful to have someone guide you initially, and then after you've had that guidance, then you start taking the initiative to do it for yourself, and you go back and read through it again. And so at this point, I've listened to that audiobook maybe 2 or 3 times fully, or not audiobook, but like podcast series. So I listened to the full Tao Te Ching and their interpretation of it at least 2 or 3 times. I have read through the book now 2 or 3 times. And so I am now going back for like my 4th run through reading it. And what I did on my last read through that I did was I would read it, and then actually for the past 2 times what I did was I would read a page, and then I would write down my thoughts on it and my interpretation and kind of translate it how I liked it, right? Like what it made me think about, right? And I wrote that down on the page. And then I went back through again, and I read I read the passage, and then I read what I had wrote from the last time. And then what's the thing about every time you read it over, you read it, and it's not, it's a weird experience. This is not just for this book. A lot of things you go back to them, and it's not what you remember, and it's different, right? Because you're always changing. Your perspective is always changing, and the book that you read, a year ago, 2 years ago, will not be the same book you read today. And if it is exactly the same and you don't see any change, then that means that you are not following you don't understand. You're not following. So that's okay, but just know that if you think you have perfect understanding, you have not understood anything. That's kind of one of the core things, and I'll go through it. But so what I've started doing now is, I just recently started doing this, but in the morning before I go to work, I read one passage. And I found this other, I don't know where I got this other version, but I have two different versions of the book. And it's kind of interesting how different they are. I don't know which one's actually more accurate. I'm assuming it's this one, because this one seems a little more flattened, if that makes sense. Right? So, but I think it's interesting to have the two different translations, two different perspectives, two different interpretations, right? So I have two different interpretations of the translation in theory that I'm reading off of, and then I'm now going through and I am writing out my explanation of what is being said. And then what I decided to try and do, which I think is actually quite fun, is I do my reduction, right? And so I write out like a full page worth of notes or worth of an explanation of what is being said in the passage. And then I try and reduce it down to like one sentence, maybe two at the most. And so I write a full page worth of stuff, and then I try and condense it down to the smallest amount while still encompassing the core idea, right? And that's what I'm trying to do. And am I completely successful? I don't know, right? But this is what I'm doing. And so my goal for this series is that I am going to read through I'm just gonna read it. So each one of these videos will be me doing a single passage, and then with the intent that you will then listen to these videos, and then, if you want to, you can re-listen to it, and then do your own reflection on what is being said here. And then, these should be pretty quick because I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to do the breakdown and interpretation because that's going to be I've already done that, right? So I'm just going to read what I have written as my interpretation. So I have two interpretations that I'm going to read. So I'm going to read it twice, well, really three times is my plan here, right? So I'm going to read it three times. Same passage technically, same meaning, written three different ways. And so, to me, I think that this is hopefully going to be helpful. And if it's not, then I don't know, whatever. But I think that this could be, I don't know. I just felt like this was something I wanted to do, so I'm going to do it. Because, as I said, I appreciated listening to this podcast, going through and reading and breaking down the Tao Te Ching. So I want to do the same. And you don't need to be like this. This is relevant no matter what your religion is, in my opinion, because it's just relating to life and experience. And it doesn't matter what your beliefs are. This is true. And so, in my opinion, right? And that's for you to decide for yourself, I suppose. But I have found it to be the truth for myself. So it's up to you. It's not it's not a book about it's not a very religious book. And I don't read it as such. I don't see the Tao as some god to worship. the Tao just is, and so am I. And so this is my initial video explaining what's going on, and then the rest of these will just be me reading each one as I go through them. And then when I get to the end of the book, then maybe I'll start again, or I'll change it up and we'll try something different, but still kind of do something. Because I finished going through and writing notes, and I kind of filled up my book. And so I was like, all right, I finished it. And then, it's probably been about a month or two since I did that, and I kind of missed it. I think it's good to wake up in the morning and, take a minute to pause and read this and then reflect. I think it's beneficial. It's like a mixture of getting your brain working, meditation and mindfulness all in one, and self-reflection and things like that. It's just, I don't know, I find it very beneficial, so I hope you do as well. And so yeah, that's what's going on here, and so welcome, and good luck. I don't know. Peace out.